Thank you all for joining. Good afternoon. I'm so happy to have you here for talking about the second stage of the Building Nonprofit Capacity Grant application process. You all made it this far, so congratulations. As a reminder, I'm Allison Wells. I'm the grants manager for Johnson County. And also on this call, we have Sean Donaldson, our grants specialist, and Becky Soglin, our sustainability coordinator. We have worked this group has worked in collaboration also with Lynette Jacoby of Social Services, who couldn't be on this call today, but she has also been quite involved. The best way to reiterate to get in touch with us is to email grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov or to go to our webpage at www.johnsoncountyiowa.gov/ARPA grants. That's where this recording will be after we are done with this webinar. So if you have any follow-up questions, or if you'd like to revisit any of the information that we're sharing here, it will be there. So just to outline, the purpose of this webinar is to give a brief overview of the second stage of the grant program, sort of reiterating the goals of the program, and then we'll walk you through the application, what's on there and what's sort of different from the LOI phase and where we would like some more information from you. And then we will have an opportunity for question and answer. So if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to put those in the chat box and we will get to those questions. If it's sort of an easy question, someone might text response, but the rest of it will be, we can just answer those questions at the end when we get to those. So as a reminder, the Building Nonprofit Capacity Grant Program is funded from Johnson County's allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds. And because of this, these grants are federal funds that are passing through Johnson County onto you. And they have a lot of requirements that most Johnson County grants don't have. These funds are intended to respond to the negative economic impacts that nonprofits experience due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, to be eligible for this program, you must be able to document the economic impact of COVID-19 on your organization. And you already spoke to that a bit in your LOI. And so obviously, we assessed your applications to move on to this next phase. But this second stage is where we're going to actually ask for more documentation of it, just for our own due diligence. Again, as a reminder, eligible projects fall into one of three categories: increased staffing, capacity, and training, capital improvements to buildings, equipment, etc., or internal infrastructure like software and other system upgrades. And your application should match what you submitted in your LOI. We anticipate some development of your program that maybe to watch how it's sort of evolved since you began the LOI process, but it should be in the same category that you submitted your LOI. It should be the same project. Again, this is a one-time funding opportunity. The program has $2.1 million in it. $100,000 is reserved for local arts organizations, and $2 million are for social service, childcare, or other non-arts nonprofits. Our intention is to make multiple 1- or 2-year awards beginning roughly January 1st of 2024. However, we understand that projects of this magnitude have the potential to face unforeseen obstacles and delays, and we will be flexible with award duration and amount based on those needs. But there's a hard deadline for full expenditure of funds by June 30th of 2026. And it seemed like your LOIs were all estimating the projects being expended by that date. So the three of us plus Lynette, scored your proposals, and you were all selected to advance to the second round of application. And that application is due on October 20th, 2023. As with the first deadline, we request that proposals are in by the end of the business day. The hard deadline then is 11:59 p.m., but as staff, we will be pretty unavailable after 4 p.m. So if you have any final questions, better to get it in earlier, just in case you need any assistance from us. So now I'm gonna sort of throw to Sean, and he's gonna walk you through the basics of the application. And then if you have any questions, please get those ready to go.
Thanks, Allison. Okay, I assume everyone can see this screen here. This is our sign-in page. Just like before, when you may have been resuming a saved application, you'll log into your application portal account or profile. Once you're in, it's going to look a little different than it did before. Previously, your application might have been stored here and in progress, but this second stage one will appear above that if you haven't already clicked into it. And it'll have right here, second stage of your application. Click one of the links below and you'll go ahead and click that link. It'll take you right where you need to be. On our organization information page, you're going to see that your application has already been auto-populated with information you submitted during the letter of interest process. If any of this information has changed since you submitted that LOI, please feel free to update it at this point in time, especially on these tax IDs and unique entity identifiers. If either of those were zeros before, by 10/20 when these are submitted, those do need to be concrete numbers. You'll also notice that there are a couple new questions on here, one of which is number of employees. We're just looking to get a little data on the organizations that we may or may not be working with and the capacity that currently exists at those entities. So that is one thing to work on. And then on our second page, you're going to see some new questions. We did bring in your answer for your previous project overview, but as we note here, please do update that to include any new information received, including like project estimates and things like that. But then we're looking for specific goals and objectives for your project, risks and challenges you anticipate facing in completing the project, a more specific timeline with what activities will occur, when they will occur, and who will be responsible for executing them. We are pursuing information about procurement of goods and services within your project. If you need additional information about that, of course, feel free to reach out to us at grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov. But do feel free to click this link here that will take you to the Code of Federal Regulations and what they say we have to abide by for procurement of goods and services. We do ask about key project personnel, looking at both employees and volunteers and what experience they'll bring to the table in completing your project, and then how you as an organization will evaluate your project. Then we have this budget table. The budget table is a place we anticipate maybe some questions. So we do have a 3-column approach here. On the far left, we're looking for the total project budget. So if, it might be a $100,000 project, we would have 25,000 in personnel, 25,000 in benefits. That's a lot. 25,000 in equipment, and let's say 25,000 in a contract. Any of these calculator buttons will sum these things across the sheet. The bottoms will sum vertically. The right will sum kind of left to right. So then in this middle column, if the total budget is 25,000, this middle column is what funding has already been secured from other sources. So if you've already gotten a grant for 10,000 of the personnel on this effort, you might put that in here. And then when we hit that calculator, it'll refresh again and show us that we still need 15,000 to complete the project. And so if you're planning on asking for all 15,000 from Johnson County, you would enter that in the right column. If you're planning on asking for, say, 10,000 from Johnson County, you would enter that, and it would show us that the remaining need for the project, that is the wrong number. It'll show us that the remaining need for the project is still that $5,000. So this will calculate all the way down the sheet, but the key thing to remember here is that the left is what you anticipate the total cost of your budget or project to be. The middle is what you've already secured from other funders, and the right is what you're asking for from Johnson County. When you're done, make sure you click a calculator. It'll sum one last time, and then verify that this number is correct. This is the total number of funds you anticipate or expect to request from Johnson County, and then you will verify that by entering it in this field here as your total request from Johnson County. Then we have our budget narrative section. We ask that you explain kind of each of the costs you've identified in your project and where funding from other sources is coming from. Then we ask that you anticipate ongoing costs. So if you're requesting funding for a capital expense, for instance, that might include utilities. If you are asking for funding for a new position, this might include ongoing salary or benefits. So we're eager to identify what those costs are, and then also to have you identify what your plan for sustaining those costs going forward and what that is, because of course this is one-time funding. And then finally, we have our impact if not fully funded question. So if that award amount is less than the total you're requesting, kind of what components of the project would be prioritized and how would that move forward. Finally, we have our documentation section. On our documentation section, we're really looking to kind of see some of the economic impact of the pandemic. So we're looking for a 2019 Form 990 to give us kind of a baseline pre-pandemic. But if your organization was established more recently than 2019, please attach your letter of determination showing that 501c3 status and when it was obtained. Then we ask for the 2020 or 2021 if you have one. If you were established more recently than 2021, do not upload a file here. So letter of determination on that first one, You do not need to upload a file here if you are more recently established than 2021. And then finally, your most recent Form 990s. If you have one from the prior tax year, please attach that here. Again, if you don't have one, if you were established even more recently than that, please attach that letter of determination. So if you were just established as a nonprofit, you may be submitting 2 letters of determination. They're the same letter of determination twice. That's okay. And then finally, we have this text box here. We've already gotten a question about this. If there's not an obvious financial impact in your tax statements from the pandemic, so if our expenses aren't obviously up or income isn't obviously down, please use this box to kind of describe how the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your organization. This does not waive the need to attach the documents. The form will still require you to attach those documents, but this is an opportunity to explain a little further what your organization weathered through the pandemic so that we can take that impact into account when reviewing these proposals. When you're done, you'll hit review and submit. Just like before, it will flag any errors that may exist. You'll have a chance to review all of your answers and then go ahead and submit that to us to move us on to the next stage.
Thanks so much for that, Sean. I do want to add, after we have received all your submissions for the application phase, the same review team will gather and do a review. We may ask we may ask an organization to meet with us for like a meeting or an interview if we have follow-up questions about your request. However, we also might not. So if we request an interview, don't panic. If we don't request an interview, also don't panic. We will do an internal review, and then that will be when we bring things before the Board of Supervisors, who will make the final funding decisions for this program. So there may be a slightly longer review period for the application than for the LOI, just as a disclaimer. So now we've sort of gone through our spiel. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat, and we are ready to answer them. We can hang out here for a while. But if you have somewhere else to be and you've had all your questions answered, you can also feel free to go on with your afternoon. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this question about requesting funds for capital improvements, hard to estimate without full proposal for construction costs from a builder. I would say do your best to estimate what you can. If you have any documentation, if you've had anyone, come and give a quote, then that would be great. But we also understand, yeah, you probably can't, to follow our procurement policy, you may not be able to get the proper quote or go that far with an organization. So give us what you can with the research that you are able to do. Next question. Due to the LOI process, are you anticipating you'll be able to fund all the applications, or is there a chance that some projects may not be funded in part or at all? That is correct. We will not be able to fund every project that has made it to this stage. It's been a very competitive pool, and we've received many great applications. So it is still very much competitive at this phase. Is it seen as a negative if you have not yet secured any additional funds for the project? Not necessarily. It sort of depends on what the project is. Like if it's a fairly narrowly scoped project for, equipment or like a one-time staff training or something like that, where it's sort of like a one and done, that then I think is no problem. But if it is a much larger project where there's like a great deal of funding and it's like more of a long-term situation, like a capital project, it is good if we can see other funders or other sources of funding. And it's also going to be really good for like a sustainability plan of how you anticipate continuing the project or continuing to finish things after Johnson County funding, or if you are able to continue the project if it's not fully funded by Johnson County. If funded for capital improvements, will we need to get a certain number of bids as in other federal granting? Yes. Depending on the dollar amount of the project, and that gets to the procurement questions. So anything under 10,000 requires no particular procurement process. Anything between 10,000 and 50,000, we require some some sort of competitive quotes. It's good if you can get quotes from more than one source. Of course, you're also welcome to get quotes from more than one source for an under $10,000 purchase as well. But above 50,000, things get a little bit more hairy, and especially above 250,000, things require like a formal competitive sealed bid process. And if you have any specific questions about procurement and bidding, we ask you to reach out to us so we can talk specifically about your project.
There's a question here about Davis-Bacon. Davis-Bacon is actually waived for ARPA projects. So Davis-Bacon does not apply to projects that are funded through this grant program.
Good question.
If there are no other federal funds included, if there are federal funds outside of the American Rescue Plan Act for that project, then it will apply.
These are some great questions, so I appreciate it. Can you speak to unique purchases, i.e. specific land and the ARPA federal procurement related to that? So it depends on the amount expected to expend. Obviously, you can't really do like an RFP for land. But yeah, maybe a more targeted question to us and we can do specific research related to that. So send us an email, Katie, and we can get back to you on your specific situation. We've got a question about if Iowa Legal Aid receives funding from the National Legal Services Corporation, which receives federal funding, does Davis-Bacon apply? My answer to that would be to double check the terms of your agreement with Legal Services Corporation, in that they should specify where the funding, like where their federal funding comes from, like if it's passed through to you. And that should include the requirements for that. If it doesn't mention anything about that, you could always reach out to that funder and double check if it does require.
Also, to clarify, this is where kind of segregation of funding sources applies. So if the funding Iowa Legal Aid is receiving from Legal Services Corporation, if that funding is not being used for this project, then Davis-Bacon won't apply. But if that funding does impact the project, then it just depends on the terms of that agreement. So that's
also good. Yeah.
If that's just general personnel funding or some programmatic support funding, then it shouldn't apply.
Yeah, so maybe a little more research into that and you can have your answer about whether you'll use it or not. Can you talk about negative economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic? Will they be judged quite literally? Many nonprofits received increased donations while seeing increased need, and that's not evident on the 990. How would you like that documented? That's where that that box can be really helpful to say, like, we got increased donations because of, we had an extra push and a lot of people felt that they wanted to participate in that way. But these are the other ways that we were impacted. Like it was very difficult to retain staff during that time, or we, had to really change our delivery model in a way that made it difficult for us to keep other things going. Made it difficult for us to do new programming that we had already planned, things like that. But that will be an evaluation piece of our, just like it was for the LOI, to determine the COVID-19 impact and if your request is proportional to that impact.
And we do have the information that we received through the LOI stored where organizations had already noted things like, uncompensated increase in services and things like that as economic impact. So please expand further in that new field, but know that we have that information on our end still.
Yeah, we are always welcome to receive questions via email for, until the application is due. So happy to talk to you all specifically about your projects if you have more focused questions. But we can also stay here for a little bit longer if people have other questions. With the uncertainty of building costs, are we able to change our ask? You mean from the LOI to the application? I would say yes, you can change your ask. If it's we've already sort of approved you to this phase with the proportionality of your request. And so if you're asking for an extra million more now than you did before, it's unlikely that will probably support that big of an increase. But you can always you can always ask for if things have changed, if the project has developed and you have better estimates now than you did before, that is fine. We knew that these were sort of bigger grant projects, and so we wanted to give you a little bit more time in the development pipeline to see. That's correct, Debbie. No extra 50 million for you. You have formal estimate plans from architects. Can we include those additional documents? Yes, that would be great. Something formal like that would be quite helpful.
The form is built best to probably summarize that in the fields themselves, but you can always email those sorts of documents to grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov to make sure we see those as well.
Yeah, we can attach those to your application on our end. All right, well, if there are no further questions, if you're working on a question, please reach out now. But if we don't have any further questions, I think we will sign off for this afternoon. But again, please send any and all questions to grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov. Both Sean and I check that email many times a day, so that is the best way to get to us. And we can do our best to answer any questions. But thank you all so much, and we look forward to reading your applications that you will submit on October 20th, on or before October 20th. Thank you.